Kudos acquired the rights to the bridge as a Swedish-Danish co-production. It's a really good example of Scandinavian thrillers which have become so popular. It was character-driven and it was exciting. You're always terrified when you do any drama, and an adaptation has plenty of challenges because you know there'll be a hardcore of people going, "No, it's not as good as the original, it's not as good as the original, why did they remake it, it's not as good as the original." You know you're going to get that. So you've just got to take that on the chin. But the one I'm really confident about is we're not going to suffer from not having the bridge when we've got the tunnel. You know, the tunnel is an extremely exciting place. Obviously, because it's Britain-France and not Denmark-Sweden, it's a totally different context, and the language differences are greater. Arguably, the cultural differences are greater. The saga was very iconic in the original. She's so marked by her borderline. It's never named as autism, but it's strongly suggested. In our version, we make a lot more of the fact that Elise is a twin. Perhaps she was always quite the quiet and withdrawn and reserved one of the pairing, but that her sister's death actually exacerbated that tendency. And Elise is very serious and takes the world very seriously. One of the things I always think with the British, which Elise actually says to Karl, is the British place an incredibly high emphasis on humour.
You're not really one for jokes, are you?
Sometimes. It depends if they're funny.
Which is great in one sense, but can also lead to a kind of annoying facetiousness and cynicism. In a way, I wanted to say that she's right sometimes, because she prioritises other things like sort of truth and rigour, and she actually finds some of those other more trivial things that are slightly sidetracking.
Danny, the point is to catch the person who did this to you. Where did you lose your mobile?
I told you, in a bar.
Which bar? Which bar?
Through her relationship with Karl, she discovers an almost different kind of sibling relationship that frees her up a little more and allows her to recover from being frozen in the grief caused by the death of her sister. The character of Karl, who in the original was Martin, I think has changed quite significantly.
My dad was a die-hard communist. He was a miner in the coalfields when there used to be coalfields around here.
Did you join the police just to annoy him?
Not consciously. I don't.
Well. This is a rare treat.
To look at a police officer who was the son of politicised Kent miners who had gone on to university and the tensions that produced. There was very little of that kind of backstory in the original. He's deeply proud of his origins and he's incredibly intolerant of people who don't understand them or who he thinks, particularly Danny Hillier, the journalist, cheapen and traduce that tradition that he comes from.
Is she there? Your sister?
He can understand Elise, and he has a sympathy for people who are different or people who don't necessarily fit, and that's one of the reasons why they click as effectively as they do, and as they definitely do in The Bridge as well. But he has weaknesses, like all human beings do. One of his weaknesses is vulnerable women, and it brings sort of catastrophe on his family life, because he's not a very good liar either, really. He can't be bothered.
Did you sleep with her?
Essentially, the story is very simple, and that for me is the art of good thriller writing. A man who, we don't know who he is, has suddenly opened this amazing overture of crime to put these bodies in the tunnel, and is clearly making some kind of statement, but they don't know what it is. And he then proceeds to reveal what he calls 5 truths. So each time he chooses a different social or political target group and uses them to illustrate something that he feels about society.
Ja.
Hvem hun, ursäkta, Saga?
We wanted to change a few of them, partly to spice things up a bit, make it different for an audience that had already seen The Bridge, and partly because there were issues that for us felt more relevant to Europe.
Look, she comes apart like the Eurozone.
The first truth is inequality before the law. The second truth is an attack on the elderly. Often the paradox of this is he becomes a sort of slight folk hero along the way.
In France, pensioners make up 1/3 of all suicides, and 1/4 experience regular abuse.
he starts to kill the elderly, but he then turns around and says, why are you moaning? You let them freeze to death in their houses, and the same number of people have frozen to death in their house probably while I've been carrying this out, and yet you do nothing about it. So he's constantly challenging, and that's what makes him, for me, an interesting serial killer. The third truth is cuts to mental health.
How the mentally ill are treated.
The use of medication to try and control people and their behaviour rather than treat the causes and symptoms of the mental health crisis that's only growing worse. Another truth is about the youth of today. This was very much one that I was interested in after the English riots. We basically want to ignore their presence, expect them to put up with a whole pile of shit that we've kind of delivered as a society, and then act incredulous and bemused when they riot and burn stuff down, and then throw them in prison for long periods of time to make them invisible again. And that's his big campaign on that one. He's making the invisible visible. He's showing us sides of our society that we generally don't want to see. He also looks at the other side of the coin. He's looking at the relationship between young people and the police. So he also attacks a police officer who's been involved in the death of a young man in a French estate. Well, it's one of my favourite truths, actually. The last one is about children and about the way in which we sentimentalise children, as long as they're either ours or like us, but really don't pay too much attention to their exploitation and deaths. So he delivers a particularly vicious truth at the end on the subject of children.
This is for you.
Under the fucking air!
It then gets personal, and there's a kind of bonus truth, and he's coming after, in particular, Karl and his family.
Oh, there you are. Oh, my baby.
And I think here we're making quite a significant difference. In the Bridge, it was all a smokescreen for him finally to go after the character's Martin. I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to see he does have a personal grudge against Karl, but all the things that he'd done before, his 5 truths, were actually properly held by him as beliefs. He really is the truth terrorist. We gave him a very different backstory, how he arrived where he did, and also brought in a shady, covert, inter-Europe spy operation, which was nicknamed Peloton.
T'es trop barjot, lui. Et pour nous.
À quelle période il a travaillé pour Peloton?
It was around the time of the Olympics, so I was looking for handy words. During the Cold War, there were such operations to cope with the potential fallout of social and economic crisis in Europe. When we started this, the financial crisis was really raging fully, and it didn't seem to me to be an unreasonable thing, or an unreasonable suggestion at least, that there would be some kind of covert planning. What happens if the cash machines stop giving out money? What happens if a country defaults? What happens if the euro collapses? And I've always been interested, from my time on Spooks onwards, of covert operations that go rogue or go maverick, or where the operatives involved develop their own agendas that take them way outside their original remit.
He's known all along.
His final truth, his bonus truth, so to speak, is that Karl has betrayed him on a personal level.
I was looking after him on an undercover operation, investigating human trafficking.
Karl.
Anyway, I slept with his wife. When they were still married.
And his final truth is trust nobody. Karl and his son have a very fraught and difficult relationship, and what he does rather brilliantly is he organises a kind of reconciliation between them online by posing as somebody else. He gives the son advice to effect a reconciliation, and only to make the pain of separating them again even more acute for Karl.
You didn't make me love my dad again. I always loved him.
And it all comes to a final denouement at the entrance to the tunnel. In what I think is the best moment of The Bridge in the original, when Saga can't lie to him, because it's all about truth in the end. We've really preserved that moment because it's so good.
Is my son alive, Elise?
For me, I wanted to make much more of that moral moment. We all fantasize about, I think, about hurting the people who hurt our children, and that is something that I find really interesting, whether or not people do it, and whether it is a commendable thing.
You fucking get back! Step away!
Shoot you.
On your fucking knees!
Or whether, as a civilized society, we should prevent people from doing it and exercising personal revenge is, for me, the sort of moral heart of the show, or should be. Because after all, if Karl, even under the most extreme provocation, with a man basically goading him and taunting him that he's killed his son, takes personal revenge on him in that moment by shooting him, which I think a small part of us would all be cheering for and hoping he would do. We've entered exactly the terrain of personal revenge of the killer himself, and in some way he's achieved a victory over us.